Well, good evening. Sorry for the noise. I'm Electra Porzel. I am the uh, um, director of the Language of Consciousness Institute. And I'm part of a group that is studying Tyson Yunkaporta's book, Sand Talk. And I think I've listened to the audio over a year ago. I became excited about the ideas there. And then I decided that I really wanted to be in discussion with people about it because the depth of it was so much deeper. At least I thought it was. And I am discovering that it is. I'm a little shocked today because we read a chapter that's called Lines in the Sand. And in that chapter, at the very end, he says that adolescent cultures, in other words, cultures who are like teenagers in the capability of acting and directing a sustainable culture, he says they always ask the same three questions. Why are we here? How should we live? And what will happen when we die? He had spent the entire chapter writing, giving us the answers. The first one is, why are we here? We're here to be as a custodial species. In other words, we're here to protect the land, protect nature, protect the planet, help it grow, and help our species be more than it is. The second one he's covered in this chapter, which is the question of how should we live? One of the things he talks about is the necessity for a culture that is sustainable over time is to be diverse, first of all. So you have a level of complexity that is honored and supported throughout the culture. The idea that there's one way to do something, one way to be, all the boxes that you and I have lived in all our lives, that's not a sustainable culture because it doesn't allow for the adaptation that is needed as forces come in and energies change and people act together. So the very first thing is diversity. Complexity is the name of the game. For years, there was something called redaction, which was trying to make something simpler and simpler and simpler, and then you missed all of the nuances of it. We never could understand something if all we know is the redacted form of it. So that's the first thing that's needed for a culture to be sustainable over time is diversity. The second one is interconnection. In other words, you and I are connected. You are connected to someone else. I'm connected to someone else. And before you know it, we're all part of a matrix of people that are moving with what is rising and adapting their behavior and the way they act with each other to not only honor their own gifts. In other words, I am not you and you are not me. We each came with a specific gift. And so we honor that Tantra would say our unique and essential self. And we work with others in adapting to support the greater whole. So we're interconnected. And if you view us all as this vibrant matrix of energy moving through, and if we're all adapting, which is another one of his protocols, we interact and we adapt. So in other words, you're not going to do this by yourself. Though years ago, there was, idea that like, oh, I can do it on my own, well, you can't. It takes a village to raise a child. It takes a village for all of us to live together. So I'm connected in relationship with others, and the others are connected relationship with others. We interact, we move and respond to what is rising. while we keep our unique and essential gifts present. So we don't, there's so much stuff about our society now that says, no, you can't be what you are. And instead of saying no to the uniqueness of an individual, we condemn them, or we demand that they shift, or we judge them and put them into a box, or they put themselves into a box. I think we've all put ourselves in boxes. It's a very, very different idea about how we come to being more. And the future of our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren and all the generations rising rest on our shoulders in this becoming, in relationship, in interaction, in adapting to the other, but adapting to the larger patterns that are operating all the time. One of the things he explained, he said that the first thing to do, let me read it to you. He says, if you want to see the overall shape of connection between things, look beyond the things and focus on the connection between them. Then look beyond the connections and see the patterns they make. Find the sites of potential risk and increase, like judging where the ball will go in a football game. So he gave an example in the book of how an elder was able to pay attention to the environment that he was in and predict what would happen. The ants would come, the rain would fall. But Tantra would call that being field-centric versus people-centric. And it's a skill we all have to learn. So it's a paying attention beyond our personal people level. And I know that's a skill that I'm going to work on for whatever remains of the years that I have. And I think about how that would be for you if you looked beyond the connections to the patterns that are part of that connection, and looking at the forces that are moving, the energies that are moving. And that will often give us the answer. So one of the things, if you look at astrology, that's what they do. They pay attention particularly to the patterns that are in the heavens, the larger patterns that actually will affect how we behave. If you know that, then you are not, a certain time is not a good time to be in a contract or start something new, or this is the time to start something new. Because they're looking at larger patterns, when we act within that, we're no longer saying, it's me. We're saying, okay, I'm going to go with the energies and how they're moving. I'm going to pay attention to those larger forces. And I am kind of flabbergasted, because I remember all my life I've been asking this question about, well, why am I here? And it turns out it isn't a sign of a higher level search. It's a question an adolescent culture asks. Why are we here? His answer, because you're a custodial species. We are a custodial species. And how should we live here? He defines as, you have to create. We are to create these cultures that can adapt. And the things that are necessary is diversity, interconnections, interrelatedness, and adaptation. Well, a couple of us are having an experiment right now. He uses a phrase called us two when he talks about two people talking. So we're going to play with that. What does us two, what does it convey when you hear that phrase? So a friend and I, us two, looked at it and said, wow, that makes me feel like suddenly there's a relationship here. Even if I read it, if he says us two, meaning me, the reader, and him, I'm in a relationship with him. So we thought we'd ask, instead of saying we or us, we could say us two. And we'll see what that does to our interactions, to the way that we pay attention, and maybe even our actions. I don't know what's going to happen from it. All I know is that I had no idea what was needed for a culture that would be sustainable over time. And I know that I'm committed to creating or doing whatever I can in my remaining years to build build patterns of acting, ways of approaching the world that will serve my grandchildren and great-grandchildren and the great-great-greats coming, so they can live in a sustainable, viable world. And I hope you're there too. Well, that's why I'm giving the talking here. If you care about where we're going as a Western culture, as a species, I really highly suggest you read the book. We're finishing up our discussion group on the book we just read the first half of the book. We're finishing up on June 7th. And then we're going to finish it up. We're going to read the rest of it and discuss each chapter in the fall. If you're interested in joining us in the fall, just go to our events page on the website, loc-institute.com, and register. Or just read the book, get some friends together, and say, what does this mean? How could I be different if what I'm pledged to, committed to, is creating something that's going to work for our babies? I see their faces. I see their children rising in their faces. And I want them, more than anything, to live a good life in a healthy environment where they are honored and respected for their unique and essential selves, and that they play the role of interactions and being with others in joy. I don't know where you stand in this. I was just astounded that what I thought was highly developed isn't. But it's the start. At least I asked the question, why am I here? And now I know why I'm here. I'm here to create the basis for a sustainable culture for my lineage and for your lineage, for all the children, grandchildren on this earth. So let's work together on it. Thanks for listening to me. Just had to say my piece. Thank you.